much on our shoulders. It's time to kiss it goodbye. No need to think it over. It's easy, we're meant to be alive. It's easy, we're meant to be So come a little closer. With you, I'm feeling so high. No need to think it over. It's easy, we're meant to be alive. We were meant to be alive. It's easy, we're meant to be on our shoulders. It's time to kiss it goodbye.
The quartz island known as Kamiak Butte that's famous for its hiking trail located just 11 miles north of Pullman, Washington, has led to a lot of questions as geologists found evidence of fossils from millions of years ago embedded on the tip of Kamiak Butte. So how is it possible for a prehistoric sea creature able to fossilize on top of a mountain? It was just over 1.4 billion years ago, in the pre-Cambrian Belt Rocks era, when the continents we know of were one with each other, before tectonic plates from volcanic activity in the ocean floor began to cause a shift called subduction, and the supercontinent Rodinia formed into Pangaea. During this time period, the minerals from Rodinia spread across the lands, and as magma spread across the continent with the shifting of plates, led to many mountain ranges we recognize today. In the northwestern of the North Americas, where the fusion of Farallon plates connected at 150 million years ago, the Pullman we now see as a sea of wheat fields was once an oceanside region. This means all of western Washington was a part of the ocean floor. The picture located at the bottom corner is the city of Seattle and its placement miles below the ocean's surface. Meanwhile, 37 million years ago, the Farallon Juan de Fuca plate and the two terrane belts also started to cause subduction by going under a tectonic plate and causing the ground to rise and form the mountains Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier on the western side of Washington. This resulted in the seaside of what we call Pullman now push inward to the east. While this is known for the Cascade era, as many volcanic activities increased and magma flow, hardening the sedimentary quartz that is formed into Kamiak Butte. The Northwestern was not free yet, as glaciers formed known as the Cordilleran Ice Sheet covered all of Canada and northern United States. This glacier is significant as the waters helped carve the mountain ranges, develop a multitude of rivers, and contribute to the spreading of minerals that created the agricultural lands of the Palouse Valley along with many others. The glaciers covered a vast amount of continents, and as climate fluctuated, so did the melting and freezing of the glaciers, continuing a constant cycle. This resulted in many floods, but the Great Missoula Flood 20,000 years ago that started in northern Montana as a sheet of ice that was formed as a natural dam melted on the edge of the Missoula Lake, releasing a violent rush of water, swept across the regions known as Idaho and Washington State until reaching the Pacific Ocean at 60 miles per hour, standing at 400 feet high. The flood helped carve out the lands while creating favorable soils as the basalts that came from the Columbian Basin landed in the Palouse Valley, giving the soils minerals that provided the habitat for vegetation species to establish in the island of Kamiak Butte. Now the island surrounded by the wheat fields of the Palouse is highly favorable to animals for coverage and foraging on the vast amount of understory species. The landscape of Washington State is called topography, and the different shades of green to brown show the variation the state has to offer. The Palouse valleys were once the oceanside when topography was different millions of years ago. Now, due to subduction, the tectonic plates have created the Cascade Mountains. The glaciers melting and the Great Missoula Flood caused weathering, which led to the Columbia River, Columbian Basin, and the spread of the basalt landing in the Palouse Valley. The western side of Washington and leeward side of the mountain has a high volume of precipitation that creates the temperate coniferous forest. On the opposite side of the mountain is the Columbian Basin, which is a significantly dry area of land that is flat, arid, while continuing to the east side of Washington is the abundance of wheat fields and valleys that includes Kamiak Butte. The mesoclimate that Palouse Valley obtains is partially due to the continentality of the region. This means the latitude and elevation from the ocean that creates the specific microclimate for that region. As Kamiak Butte is less than 4.5 hours away from the Pacific Ocean, located in the west, that the rating would be in between a 3 to 4. This describes the distance and the effects of a different climate of the topography. With the high altitude of Kamiak Butte, we can distinguish the microclimate will be slightly different than the regions in lower elevations. If the climate changes, then the continentality would follow, as temperatures will affect temperature change, the topography would change, and vegetation and soil as well. The type of layers beneath the soil is the reason farmers can't establish certain crops for agriculture purposes on Kamiak Butte. The mixture of the belt rocks and the basalts hardening, keeping crops or water from penetrating the layers so no nutrients can be absorbed, and roots don't have a firm support. There are only two of the rock formations now with quartzites. The higher in elevation on Kamiak, the more exposed the quartzite becomes due to the less moisture and soil. The rain-shadow effect is the significant source of the variety of species, vegetation, and soil density that forms Kamiak Butte. This is due to the Cascade Mountains blocking the moisture on the leeward side, and as elevation rises, the air pressure changes. By the time it reaches on the other side, it dissipates. As the marine polar and continental polar air currents collide, creating the right climate for precipitation to fall again as the currents travel inward. The rain drops right on the Palouse valleys. The megaclimate is a temperate coniferous forest and holds a mesec environment for species living in the region located. The climate has moderate precipitation and sunny days. The different trees located on Kamiak Butte love the xerophytic climate in certain areas, like the ponderosa pine located closer to the mid or lower valley bottom. The western temperate forest is known as the continental formation, and western yellow pine is the regional formation. During the summer, there is the beautiful sea of wheat along your daily commute, while in the winter, there is the mesmerizing view of white snow with no ending in sight. Now, Whitman County continuous conditions are due to the climate. The averages for sunny days are 172. Meanwhile, the average for precipitation is 109 days out of the year. This includes snow, rain, sleet, and hail. The climate shows the pattern for the best weather being in summer months, with August reaching an average of 84 degrees. In the winter, the months are filled with an average of 32 inches of snow a year. Whitman County receives more snowfall than any other counties across Washington state. This is due to the rain shadow effect. On the northern side, the hiking trail begins in the valley bottom, surrounded by tall shrubs of ninebark, trees of Douglas firs and western larches. These tree species prefer temperate moisture and can handle mid-tolerance for shade, but less resistant to fires. The species are usually in pairs, spread throughout the lower and middle levels. As ponderosa pines are located towards the peak of Kamiak Butte due to their need for xerophytic stands with more sunlight and less shade, the deer and elk would prefer to feed and live in the dense covered forest, while small rodents like mice can easily access and scavenge the grasslands for food. Many species include wolves, foxes, coyotes, weasels, bears, and squirrels too. There was only one old-growth ponderosa pine within a 17-meter to 37.5-meter radius, while there are 6 Douglas firs and 3 western larches at an elevation of 3,051 feet, with a slope of 7 and an aspect of 8 degrees north. The peak of Kamiak Butte is the opposite of the north side, as the tree coverage is lower than 10% and the understory is filled with an abundance of African grass. There are several different factors that is the cause of such a drastic change in the mesophytic site of the butte turned into a xerophytic site just a few yards over the peak. The first reason is the rain shadow effect, only providing adequate moisture on the north side and washing the nutrient-filled soils down toward the valley bottom, leaving only the exposed quartzite. The boulders of the quartzite create dens used by species that are predators like cougars and wolves. The stand we observed only had 2 ponderosa pines that enjoy the south side of Kamiak Butte due to no shade interference and dry climate. Thus, a dominant tree for this site with the invasive species called African grass sweeping the understory as a result in the soil type and less moisture. This creates the typical environment that is prone to less intense but frequent fires. It is only shown scorch marks on the south of the trees. The fires leave the new growth trees as snags before becoming established, along with many understory species like dried out serviceberries and minimal forbs. Animal species that prefer solitary habitats like cougars and porcupines can be found here. The stand was located at 3,207 feet in elevation, 26 degrees southeast aspect, and slope of 30. The puma concolor is known by many names in different regions across North America and South America. This species in English has an estimated of over 40 names such as cougar, catamount, panther, mountain lion, and puma as the most popular to use. The cougar is a top predator that has once roamed the large territories in the Americas until they were eradicated by humans for their anthropogenic needs to keep them from hunting their game like deer, elk, and moose. The cougar is considered a small cat, even though it is the 4th largest cat in the world and the 2nd in the Americas. Its tan to gray coat with the muscular extremities gives the cougars an intimidating exterior, but the people wouldn't believe that it doesn't project a loud roar. Instead, the cougar creates a hissing and purr sound, which can be confusing to those who haven't recognized a cougar by sound. They are able to give birth year-round and have an estimated lifespan of 10 to 13 years, but with human influence could be up to 20 years. The 200-pound males and 130-pound females with their black tip markings give them enough strength to target the biggest prey of ungulates like moose and caribou. Even though the species once roamed freely across the Americas, it's now placed on the endangered species list, with the population down to only a few hundred cougars now only seen and located in the northwest of the United States and in a few southern states like New Mexico. However, they are only also known to live in Canada as well. They prefer to live as secluded individuals and are only seen in packs when they become mothers raising their cubs. They prefer densely covered forests, mountains, rocky formations, and have an abundance of prey. Cougars would be considered generalist species due to their quick adaptability to any environment from the mountains, dens, to grasslands, even swamps and jungles in the South American countries. This signifies the importance of cougars as a keystone predator that helps balance prey species that otherwise would overpopulate certain regions. In certain regions, they would be called umbrella species, which means they rely on anthropogenic influence and conservation for providing large, safe territories to roam. The Erythrozon dorsatum is a part of the Erythrozontidae family, which is also considered a rodentia. Their name is translated by Native Americans to mean the animal with an irritating back. The porcupine is native to North America and is considered the second largest rodent after the beaver by weighing 20 to 40 pounds with yellow-brown to black and white fur. This species is considered the New World porcupine or quill pig, as they are carrying over 30,000 quills that lay dormant unless threatened. When a predator is near the quills, they don't fly towards them but become embedded into the skin with barbs at tips, which helps keep the quills inside, often moving in deeper until penetrating organs if hitting the wrong spot. This makes the porcupine a prey that is a part of the thrill of many predators like bears, bobcats, coyotes, minks, cougars, and fishers as the top predators for them. The porcupine doesn't hold any chemicals that could poison their attackers because the quills are held in loosely, so they often poke themselves as well. The species is a K-selected mammal that mates in the winter and gives birth only to one offspring called a porcupet. This means that they have less offspring but are stable population that live for an estimate of 20 years. The porcupines are known to move slowly and develop poor eyesight, so adaptations to their way of communicating with large orange frontal incisors to growl, chatter, and hiss along with 4 curved claws for climbing. Their small body and fur coat help them adapt to water when they need to eat aquatic herbaceous plants. As herbivores, the porcupines forage on twigs, berries, nuts, flowers, buds, but prefer to munch on bark. They rely on bark as main part of their diets in the wintertime, as they don't hibernate and they move to trees for protection. Although the porcupines live in communal dens during mating season, during the rest of the season they prefer solitude. Their habitats are widespread across the United States, but mostly in the Northwest and across Canada and Alaska. Like the cougars, their habitats can range from dens, rocky formations, hollow trees, snags, shrub steppes, woody swamps, and mixed forests. The concern comes from humans who find the porcupines pests in the forestry industry as they consume up to 12 different types of tree species that adapt to the present habitat. The porcupines who live in the patches of forest surrounded by civilization often target sodium-tasting wires in the vehicles and buildings, which humans find them as difficult to control. It would take professionals to properly capture a 30,000 quilled rodent to relocate safely. Otherwise, porcupines stay to themselves with their resilience to regrow their bones after falling out of trees. They can be considered a small quill-powered porcupine. With cougars and porcupines, their habitats both remain in dense forests, dens, rock formations, and in the northwestern region. This means they cross paths as predator and prey, but the cougars have not learned their lesson on the weak spots of the porcupines. Their stomachs are the only spot that don't contain the 30,000 quills, but due to their power of spreading them out when threatened, any predator leaves with a few quills embedded in them. If they're lucky, maybe the quill barbs didn't penetrate any organs or were swallowed in digestion. Regardless if the cougar stomachs have enzymes to help them break down the quills, they still cause significant damage. This came to a surprise as the relationship doesn't seem to be just on the predator's benefit, but the prey gets to take a top predator down with them. How could they live so close to each other? The reasonable answer would be for the porcupine to find another old-growth tree to provide a safer nesting area. I believe it's the perfect spot for the porcupine to live as they can thrive and eat off the tree while living in solitude. Meanwhile, the isolated territorial cougar marks the surrounding site that is works the ground, which signals the predators to stay away. In results, the porcupine won't have to worry of more than one predator and leaves more foliage for them to eat due to the prey who enter the area to succumb to the cougars. Recent studies from wildlife biologists have found the high mortality rate of 59 deaths within 14 years in cougars stems from the fatal hunt against quill-powered porcupines. The porcupines only need to be hyper-aware, which during the winter, living in the dens, can the cougars be found, but their need for the large territory to hunt and migrate means they will relocate for the rest of the seasons. This leads to a fine line between mutualistic commensalism and predation relationship that could be the downfall for both of them or the benefit for both of them. The loss for the cougars, as injuries will always come with eating porcupines. You would think their urges to rather choose ungulates would be better worth it than being punctured. The similar habitats seem to follow a pattern and the indication that the small, quill-powered porcupine could risk keeping the enemy closer.
Running for you every day and night. I'm running for you, gotta move, don't want no ride. So warm me up, cause I know the world is at my feet, yeah. So take me higher, baby, let's go and hit the streets, yeah. So I'll keep running for you. So I'll keep running for you. Every day and night, I'm running for you, gotta go and step outside. So warm me up, cause I know the world is at my feet, yeah. So take me higher, baby, let's go and hit the streets, yeah.